Okay, this video is chapter 21 of Sleep. It's from the same book, Poor Man's Way to Prevent Dementia and Raise Your IQ. We're going to go to the chapter on sleep now. Okay. Gotta move this out of the way. Oh, I just started out first with a lullaby. This lullaby, it's I think by Sir Edward Bolton, but it's sung by John McCormick. It's called All Through the Night. Sleep, my love, and let peace attend thee all through the night. Guardian angels God will lend thee all through the night. It's very beautiful. I mean, it's the best, okay? And John McCormick, I think he's my favorite opera singer that ever lived. So if you want to check that out on YouTube, I think you'll really enjoy it. Try to sleep 6 to 8 hours a night. It's very easy to start decreasing sleep out of convenience because we run out of time, but it's good to try to get at least 6. And you'll get a sense of what optimizes you. When you don't have to work, you got the day off, and you can just sleep as much as you want. Go to bed early, see how long you sleep, and that's probably your optimal amount. Sometimes you try to catch up, but you can't always do it, so it's good to try to get it every night that you can. But that's the number to remember. Try to get 6 to 8 per night. Okay, this slide here is, we're going to talk a little bit about what the brain does at night when you sleep. So there's your brain in the center of here. And this yellow stuff is the cerebrospinal fluid, usually abbreviated CSF. Up around it on the top of the convexities are the venous sinuses, like superior sagittal sinus in the midline. Okay? And what happens is the CSF helps collect the waste products from your brain cells, your neurons. And they're reabsorbed in several locations, including what are called the arachnoid villi or arachnoid granulations along these sinuses, then into the venous system. Okay, and what the brain's doing is it's expelling its waste products so they can be taken to the liver, and the liver can handle the processing. It would be a waste of brain resources, brain space, to have to do all of its detoxification and processing of waste products inside the skull. The skull would have to be too big. Okay, so the CSF also protects the brain. It's like a water helmet, like a football water helmet as well. And it's at night that the cleaning takes place. The brain actually does have some lymphatics. It doesn't have lymphatics, within the brain parenchyma, the brain tissue itself, but it has lymphatics, because all the body has lymphatics. The brain's like unique in not having them centrally within the brain parenchyma. So it has them in the periphery. Cortex means bark, like the bark of a tree. You can see here the cerebral cortex is this gray line. It's called the gray matter ribbon, and that's all on the outer surface of the brain. And then outside of that is what's called the dura mater. Okay, mater means mother, dura means hard, so it's like a hard mother. And it's just a connective tissue on the outer surface of the brain. You could almost think of it like a leather inner lining of a football helmet, if you will. All right, so anyways, it contains lymphatics, labeled here in green. And so some of the brain waste products from the cerebrospinal fluid are reabsorbed into these lymphatics. They go down to the neck lymph nodes, and again, they go to liver for processing. But the point of all this is the brain cannot go offline in the day. You have to be awake. You have to be alert. So your neurons have to be functioning optimally. You have to maintain precise ionic gradients. So at night, though, your brain can go offline, and then the cerebrospinal fluid can rinse over the nerves and take away their waste products, okay? It's, here, I'll show you the picture of that. It's very much like, English Victorians dumping out their chamber pots into the street and then the rainwater rinsing that away. Okay, so here is an artery coming into the brain parenchyma. These are the penetrating arteries of the brain. And then they have, around them, they have this yellow stuff is cerebrospinal fluid, and these are perivascular spaces. In more precision, they're called perivascular spaces of Virchow-Robin. All right, so anyways, at night, these spaces open up, more cerebrospinal fluid, more CSF flows along the artery, and then it passes out. There's opening up of the blood-brain barrier. It passes out along the neurons. The neurons expel their waste products. These little brown things are like neuronal waste products. And the CSF rinses them over to the venous perivascular space. Then they go into the perivascular space. Some go into the veins, and they're reabsorbed from the skull, and they're sent to the liver for processing. The supporting cells in the brain are called glial cells, which kind of almost means like glue. They're really like the mama neuron, the mama cells. They do everything for the neuron. They help to feed it. They help to take care of it. Whereas a neuron is the communication cell. It's sending messages. That's the main thing that it does. Okay, so the point of all this, though, is that you have to get your sleep in order for your brain cells, your neurons to clean out their waste products, and in order to be smart. So the smartest we ever are is first thing in the morning when we wake up after we've had a decent sleep, because our neurons are fresh and ready to go. There was some great world champion of memory contests, and people ask him, "What's your favorite supplement?" And he says, "Vitamin S for sleep." He says, getting a good night's sleep is the most important thing for being cognitively sharp. And I also think that was like an advantage I had when I was a student. I studied a lot, and I knew what I was studying and stuff. So what I did was I never did an all-nighter ever. I just studied really well, went to sleep. So I feel good. I'd be quick on the test. That's what you want. Okay, if you do walk and talks, you'll have good memory. You won't need to do all-nighters, all that kind of stuff. I never did one of those. Okay, let's see. What else? Why do they keep the lights bright in Las Vegas? So you stay up all night, you keep gambling, lose all your money. Our brain is programmed, its melatonin production system, kind of by sky blue. It's that sky blue color that we go by. So you especially want to avoid blue light. A lot of screens, a lot of cell phone screens emanate blue light. So you don't want to be looking at that at night. You might have noticed, if you've ever seen the difference between a blue light clock or a red light clock. The blue one kind of keeps you awake. You don't want that, especially at night when you're trying to sleep. So if you're going to get a clock, like have an alarm clock in your room, it's good to have a red light on. Ideally, a battery one. But, I do plug mine in still, even though I know battery, they say, is better. But I'm sleeping pretty well right now, so there it is. If I ever stop sleeping so well, I'll get a battery one. It's good to have no electronics in the bedroom. As a matter of fact, I recommend, get all that stuff out of the room. And don't even have your cell phone in there. Have it in the bathroom near the bedroom or something. Just the farther from you, the better. I actually also have an EMF set up in my bedroom with a Faraday cage around the bed. And I checked with one of these tri-field meters. They're just EMF meters, electromagnetic field. And mine is 0 inside that area, which I like, because I figure you can't control your exposure during the daytime to EMF, but you can control it at night, so you might as well do that. In a sense, make it a sanctuary. And that kind of goes back to the research of Martin Pall. He's that PhD guy who was both a biologist and a physicist, and he was concerned because he said that he thinks the amount of EMF exposure to humans is dramatically increasing, including the newer types that are pulsed, like 5G, which he is more worrisome. And based on animal studies, he's worried that that's going to lead to cognitive impairment in humans. So if you can at least diminish it at night, then you'll have slowed it down, a lot. So why not? Okay, be careful about giving cell phones to your kids, okay? My wife and I had a disagreement to it, and she wanted the kids to have a phone because that way they can call her when they needed a ride home faster. But what I've noticed is cell phones lower people's IQs, especially children, because as soon as they get a cell phone, all of a sudden what they focus on, instead of reading and school and intelligent conversations, they become obsessed with social life and sending text messages to their friends and stuff. And then kids will sleep with their cell phone in their bedroom, even right next to them, so they can answer their text messages right away. They can send like 100 text messages in a day. I send about one text message every 4 months. That's about how often I send text messages, okay? Again, I think that's a secret of resilience and academic ability. People ask me, how could you be so prolific of a writer and a video maker? It's because I'm not distracted with all this modern stuff. I'm like Aristotle, okay? I like books, okay? I don't like all this modern stuff. I think it makes people stupid. So there were times I would find my kids sleeping with their cell phone right next to their head. It's a low-power microwave transmitter. That's quite bad for the brain to be having that next to your head. You shouldn't even hold it next to your head when you're talking. Hold it away like this. Okay, try to avoid stressful thing at night. Don't watch the news. It's always stupid, just trying to, shock the pros. Start winding down your day a couple hours before going to bed, 2 to 4 hours, and it helps your melatonin to have time to ramp up. It's produced in your pineal gland. Basically, melatonin and cortisol are a seesaw. Cortisol is a stress hormone of being fully awake. Melatonin is a sleep hormone of being relaxed. More parasympathetic autonomic hormone. Cortisol is a sympathetic autonomic neuron hormone, SANS. And melatonin's PANS, parasympathetic autonomic nervous system. That's the accelerator and the brake parts of the autonomic nervous system. Okay, put low watt bulbs in places like your bathroom, where if you have to put the light on in certain places before you go to bed at night, keep that light kind of low. Red light, of course, is better. I like the halogen lights better. The LEDs give off often a bluish light, which is less than optimal. I don't like fluorescent lights because they give off mercury. When I was young, I used to like the room cool, and a lot of people who give advice on how to sleep better at night will recommend a cool room. But here's the downside of that. As you get bigger, I'm like 60 years old, you get bigger, you got a prostate, okay? And the prostate in a man pushes on the bladder a little bit, and so you got less bladder volume before you got to wake up to take a leak. So, like when I was a young guy, I could sleep all through the night and I'd have to void once. But now I know that I'll have to void probably at least once. And it's not a big deal to go back to sleep after one or two. But if you're having to void more often than that because the room's cold and you have to void more to get it more to void when it's cold, I don't like that. So now I like the room hot. So I'll put the furnace on. Also, I liked the furnace on because, the heat coming in, because then it creates a noise that, so I don't hear the family making noise. I don't hear the dogs making noise. At night, I also avoid foods that are wet. Like I won't eat oatmeal at night because I'll have to wake up to void. I like the room pretty dark, about as dark as it could get. I kind of know the room by feel because I've been in there a bazillion times. If you're new to the room, though, you want to have enough light that you can see the wall so you don't bump into things. You can even turn the clock to face the wall, or even partially cover it with a box or something, so your room is dark enough. You figure that out for yourself. Another big thing is caffeine. You want to avoid caffeine. You get caffeine elevation. Caffeine elevates the same hormones as psychological stress, which is cortisol, which raises blood glucose level, increases glutamate transmission in your hippocampus and other parts of your brain. Also the catecholamines, that's adrenaline and noradrenaline, same thing as epinephrine and norepinephrine. So you don't want it. Sleep deprivation causes elevation of the same hormone. Same thing with psychological stress. So avoid things that are going to unnecessarily stress you out. And I think caffeine is like this totally overrated thing in society. Okay, and you'll see things like some of these sleep experts, okay? Matthew Walker, he's a bright guy, and he's nice. I mean, I kind of like him, but I think he's wimping out, in my opinion. Because he'll tell people, oh, it's okay to drink a little bit of coffee. And there's other, experts, so-called experts, and they're pretty famous, okay? They're saying, oh, up to 2 or 3 cups of coffee a day is fine. It increases your health and longevity. This is all BS. It's not true. And there's other experts who say you can drink coffee up to 2 p.m. That's a bad idea. It has a 6 to 8 hour half-life. And you're raising exactly what you don't want to raise. Everyone says, oh, stress is bad. Well, then why drink coffee? It's the exact same, not exactly the same thing, but it's the same hormones, okay? Elevating cortisol and your catecholamines, your adrenaline, noradrenaline, epinephrine, norepinephrine. You don't want to do that. That can worsen your sleep. And even if you sleep the same number of hours, you'll tend to not sleep as deeply. You're not as refreshed. Your neurons are not as well restored in the morning. So if with a half-life of 6 to 8 hours, even if you drink it in the morning, some of that's still around, floating around while you're trying to go to bed at night. Okay, and even decaf, it'll have less caffeine than regular, but it still has caffeine in it. I would recommend avoiding all that stuff. I used to drink it for years, 1 or 2 cups a day, but I was so glad when I quit. I feel better. It took me about, over 2 weeks to fully come back to being my normal self. I was like sad for about 3 days and then had cravings for about 2 weeks, but once I got past that, I felt great. Okay, what else does caffeine do? Besides making you tired, you can induce a vicious cycle. You don't get enough sleep, and then because you don't get enough sleep, you drink more caffeine the next day. And the sleep deprivation itself will increase these same hormones, cortisol and catecholamines. So that's all bad. Plus, the cortisol elevation is also an immunosuppressant. It'll increase your risk of getting infections. When you're stressed out, too, and you're highly caffeinated, you'll have a tendency to be more impulsive, to say things you really shouldn't say. You can get yourself, mess up relationships with that sort of thing. Also, caffeine, I consider it a double screw job. What I mean by a double screw job is it increases metabolic rate in your neurons because it increases the glutamate transmission, the excitatory neurotransmitter, in your hippocampal synapses, for example, while simultaneously lowering the cerebral blood flow. So that's the exact opposite of what you want to do. You heard me talk about my neurovascular uncoupling theory of dementia, cognitive decline. You're raising the metabolic rate of the neuron while simultaneously lowering the oxygen and glucose delivery because of the vasoconstriction, narrowing of the arteries, and increasing the metabolic rate because you're increasing the glutamate transmission across the synapses. So that's bad. You don't want to do that. When you're young, you compensate for it pretty well, but you keep on adding all these things up, as I've shown with my other slides here, and you're pushing yourself in the wrong direction. You don't want to do that. Okay, so you can get, like I said, you can get a vicious cycle going of lack of sleep, drink more caffeine, tiredness the next day, etc., etc. Okay, caffeine increases your blood pressure, which you don't want. Hypertension is bad for health. Main risk factor for stroke, cerebrovascular atherosclerotic disease. It accelerates your heart rate, and in some persons that can increase their risk of atrial fibrillation. Caffeine increases your blood lipids, also increases your atherosclerosis risk, increase calcium excretion in the kidneys, increase your risk of kidney stones. You'll pee out more of your magnesium, so magnesium is a vasodilator. It's also needed to run your ATP-related active transport pumps in your plasma membrane of your neurons and other cells of your body. So you're more prone to becoming magnesium deficient, and there's all kinds of problems a person can have from becoming magnesium deficient. So that's all bad. So it counteracts the benefits of eating plants. To quit coffee, I just tapered it off, 25% each day. So for each cup, at a time I was drinking 2 cups a day. I went down 25% on the first cup the first day, then 50% on that cup the next day, then 75%, then 0. Waited a week and then did it with the next cup. I didn't even notice anything after I quit the first cup, but when I quit the second cup, that's when I felt sad for about 3 days and had cravings for a while. For about 2 weeks. I had a friend who had cravings for a month. Okay, here's a good book to read about caffeine, because you're going to hear a lot of people try to tell you caffeine is some type of health food. That's all BS. And just so you know, I did a separate video. I've done separate videos on the glymphatic system. I've done separate videos on my no EMF bed. I also made a video book review of this book right here, Caffeine Blues. Author's name is Stephen Chernisky, and he goes through all the studies on caffeine, and it's worse than I'm saying here. I'm just kind of giving you the quick overview. I mean, I think the simplest way to just conceptualize it is, gee, you want to minimize your stress, well then why drink something that raises the same hormones as stress? I would also say try to avoid MSG and all these processed foods with all the glutamates, and some people that can worsen insomnia and can cause headaches, which you don't want. And the only way to really avoid all that manufactured free glutamate is to get rid of all the processed food, because almost all of it has free glutamate in it. The bedroom should only be for sleep and for sex. That's it. Oh, what was I going to say? Okay, get the electronics out. Oh, having sex helps a man to sleep. And it's been shown to lower their risk of heart attack and cancer. So I said that to my wife back in the day, and she didn't seem to care. What else? We talked about the glial system, the lymphatic system. Okay, what else? I would also say on the weekends, if you have teenagers living in your house, let them sleep late, just because teenagers need more sleep, and their circadian rhythms tend to be set later for going to bed later and waking up later. I just think that's how it is for teens. I can remember back when I was a college student, there was a class offered at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I remember being quite annoyed by that. Why would they offer a class at 8 o'clock? That is too early in the morning to have a class. They should not do that. Don't they know that no college student wants to attend a class that early? Now, with my personality where I like to wake up really early, I could go to a 7 o'clock class. But back when I was young, I used to think it was ridiculous to have classes start at 8 o'clock in the morning. So they need to sleep a little later, so I think it's good for them to be allowed to sleep later. They're not the same as an older person when it comes to sleep. Okay, so anyways, that's it for the chapter on sleep. Hope that was helpful.